How is it that a man who met qualifications for ministry could not pastor a church for more than a few years at a time without leaving or being asked to leave? How did this recluse who moved around the world up to 12 times in his life become one of the most prolific Christian writers? How did this man become one of the most respected theologians and apologists of the 20th century without the usual support that comes from a congregation that can verify and hone the gifts of those in service to the church? How did he have subscribers before the internet and social media was even a thing? We are talking about a guy who at times didn't even go to church and turned away Christian visitors from his home, but provided some of the most meaningful theological writings in Christian history. Today we are going to learn that the pen is truly mightier than the sword. Ladies and gentlemen, A.W. Pink. Hello, welcome to the Evangelist Nick Garrett channel, Truth First Christianity in a Post-Christian Country, where we separate the objective and factual about the Christian faith from the subjective and traditional for the benefit of our faith walks. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We appreciate every subscriber sincerely. Make sure your notification bell is shaded all the way in and support us any way you can. Please visit us on other platforms at Evangelist Nick G. Thank you. Now, A.W. Pink. What a fascinating character. Arthur Pink, better known as A.W. Pink, was born in Nottingham, England in 1866. His father was a corn merchant. And by Pink's own words, later, he revealed his father to be kind of a nonconformist. And if he was a believer, he didn't affiliate with any particular denomination for long periods of time. Arthur Pink had a little bit of training in music, but not much else is known about his childhood. At a relatively young age, though, Pink became what was known as a theosophist, which if you don't know much about them, you should learn. It's kind of a spiritual catch-all with occultic elements. The group in modern times known to subscribe to theosophism is the UN and proponents of global government. Now, Pink rose to prominence inside this theosophist group, but in 1908 he abandoned it altogether for evangelical Christianity. This is remarkable. I wish we knew more about why, but we just don't. Two biographers attempted to dig into Pink's motives, but couldn't say with certainty why he did this. Further, even those alive that knew Arthur Pink and could be interviewed couldn't really explain much about it either. Whatever happened, Pink was hit with great zeal for the Christian message. He determined to become a preacher, and he left England for Moody Bible Institute. Yet, not lasting more than a few years there, he became a pastor at a church in Silverton, Colorado. So he went from theosophism to a period of self-discovery and going to Moody, but within only 2 years was leaving Moody for the pastorate. This acceleration today would be viewed as highly irresponsible for an aspirant to the ministry, but reveal that he was either a really smooth talker or had exceptional talents plainly visible to everyone he encountered. As would become a theme in his life, within only a few years he left the church in Silverton, Colorado. Not much is known about what he did, but scholars assume he went to California. Yet by 1916 he was headed back east to Kentucky to take joint pastorate of a few churches there. He married Verna Russell in 1916, and by 1917 was heading to yet another church assignment in Scottsville. That same year, the newlyweds left for South Carolina, where Pink became a pastor of Northside Baptist Church in Spartanburg. During this entire process, and quite possibly the reason Pink was so trusted given his flighty and limited stability, was an exceptional talent for writing biblical truth. His first two books came out in 1917 and 1918, and while at the time they espoused theological views he would later change, the reader of Pink's work today is taken on a journey through an almost personal catharsis and conversation with the scriptures that would lead to his later theology so popular to Calvinism and Reformed Baptist circles. Now, in 1918, what was arguably Pink's most prolific work, The Sovereignty of God, was published. While a first edition, it was something special. It spoke about sin and God's relationship to it, and a being with pure attributes. Clearly written in the vein of the Puritan greats, Pink's work was undeniable in its impact. During his lifetime, he would try out sections of his written material as an itinerant preacher. Regrettably, there were times where he was not invited back more than once. Still, the books gained popularity because they were aligned with dispensationalism, a theology popular at the time with prominent preachers like Harry Ironside and Arno Gablin. Little did they know his views would change over time. Suffering from burnout and health problems, he left his church assignment yet again under the premise of a sabbatical, but not long after that, he was found teaching Bible in California for a tent evangelist named Thompson. This suited him well. It accompanied his desire to write, a craft to which he became convinced God was calling him to. Given his flighty nature and inability to plant roots, he was studious and prodigious. He was a lover of the scriptures. In 1922, he began a work that would consume much of his life. He published his first issue of Studies in the Scriptures. At the time, mail order subscription and periodicals on shelves was how people obtained such work. By the end of 1923, Pink had gained 1,000 subscribers. How many creators today would love to have 1,000 subscribers? Although the two prominent writers of his biographies disagree on the range of numbers, Ian Murray and Richard Belcher, they say probably somewhere between 200 and 1,000 at various points in his life, 1,000 after his death or more. While A.W. Pink seemed to have found his life's calling and a way to feed he and his wife, he suffered a nervous breakdown in 1923 and moved with Vera, his wife, to live with friends in Philadelphia. By 1925, Pink's health had recovered. His writing had continued to gain limited notoriety. On that belief there was more to be done, the pair moved to Sydney, Australia this time, where Pink worked as an evangelist and Bible teacher at Ashford Tabernacle. His bold preaching turned off many, and the organized denominational conferences, it often left them to blacklist Pink from teaching and preaching. Although his did find pastorates for a few small, strict Baptist churches. His style. Eventually, Pink and Vera moved again to England to preach at a church that didn't have a pastor in Seaton, Devon. Before long, the elders were split on Pink's style, concerned that he would split the congregation. With his puritanical Calvinistic approach, who knows? Another shut door, and the Pinks were heading back to America. His wife Vera believed that there might be an opportunity for him to preach at a church in her home state of Kentucky. Yet it didn't take long for them to refuse Pink's pastorate yet again. It may have been around this time that Pink decided his place was not inside the fold of denominational Christianity. In 1929, he wrote to a friend saying, quote, "I am more firmly convinced today than I was 14 months ago that our place is on the outside of the camp. That's the place of reproach, of loneliness, and of testing," end quote. Another rejection and another move back to California. This time, Pink, preceded by his writing, started a Bible class in Glendale, Arizona. There he began turning down opportunities to speak to fundamentalist Christians. Before long, though, it was he and his wife moving again back east to Union City, Pennsylvania, and eventually York. This was a time of change in Pink, though. Over many years of being rejected and bounced around the world on the rejection of his message, he decided his ministry would be one of writing alone. And that could be done from anywhere. So they decided that they were going to move back to England yet again. He devoted himself entirely to the periodical Studies in the Scriptures, living near one of his benefactors who believed in the power of his writing. Between 1934 and 1936, all the rejection seemed to have taken its toll on Pink. While his periodicals did well, he and Vera made their last move to Hove near Brighton. After the death of his father, he received enough of a little inheritance for he and his wife to live on, but while closing himself off to the world and to other Christians. There's a few friends that he did have, and they called his writing an obsession, a total obsession, all-consuming, isolating. When local Christians did show up and knock on his door, they were asked to leave, being told, hey, they were interrupting his work. His wife was always concerned about his self-care, given the amount of time he spent on his work. A surprising aspect of his ministry was the number of men who wrote him, though, after having read his work. The letters survive today and reveal a very wise man who, despite his own cross to bear, seemed uniquely able to inspire and bring the Scriptures to life with everyone he encountered. After his death, his biographers interviewed people who said that Pink was directly responsible for the great soul care and health in their Christian life. Now, things seemed as well as they could get for the Pinks after a lifetime of failing to plant roots. They would move one last time, although this time it was air raids from the German Luftwaffe in World War II that compelled their move to the Calvinist stronghold Stoneway, Isle of Lewis, Outer Hebrides, Scotland. Vera and author lived through the war, but by 1951, Pink's health was failing. He refused any medication that would dull his senses and affect his writing. By 1952, he had died. Continuing to speak to the end about his passion for writing and the Word of God, his last words were said to be, "The Scriptures speak for themselves." Wow. A.W. Pink's popularity skyrocketed in recent decades with the release of several biographies and the continued popularity of the publication Studies in Scriptures, yet there are amazing facts that make A.W. Pink an enigma. By today's standards, this man would never get pastorship of a church. He would be judged. The verse in Hebrews about not forsaking the assembling together would be thrown in his face every day. What can A.W. Pink say to us, though? Never give up on the talents that God gives us to further the kingdom, no matter how many doors are closed on us. A.W. Pink would be in excellent company today. Smart, well-meaning, and truly converted Christians have opted out of institutional churches, but remain in the Word, the theology, and the prayer life. However, in the social media age, it's important to pray for those Christians like Pink. How long can we sustain our journeys and absorb what we're reading without mentors to bounce these ideas off of? If we don't have them, we're only ever talking to the voices in our heads. Further, what of mentorship? We can master systematic theology, but who will teach us what it looks like to be a Christian day in and day out for years and decades? This cannot come from books. In that sense, we must be careful to enjoy every word Pink has to say without reveling in his intellectual pride. To learn more, check the bibliography in the video description. Thank you for watching this video with me and sharing this journey through one of my favorite theologians of the 20th century. Please visit amazon.com/author/nicholasdgarrett to check out my books that I've written, and please consider buying one. It is how I continue to support this work. You can also support me on Patreon with my nonfiction history work about the ancestors of George Washington, patreon.com/shipwreckbooks. I'm on BitChute at Evangelist Nick G, Twitter at Evangelist Nick G, and Facebook, Evangelist Nick